All right, we're live. So
Hey!
I didn't do the I didn't do like the timer on it this time. That's funny. Oh man, Ben, do we have a show for these people, huh?
We do. An
Do we have a
off-the-cuff
show or
show.
what?
Oh,
Yeah, man. It's the Ben and Marty and Ben show where we talk about, we like to talk about off-market stuff. You have a really cool off-market thing that you may or may not want to share.
yeah.
But we can talk about whatever today. Today's a wild card. I think we're also going to talk about a deal because I said in the show we would talk about deals. But
Yeah.
why don't we do this quick, Ben? Let's bring up some good and some bad for our week so far. So I already know kind of what your bad is because we talked about it earlier this week.
You know what? That bad turned into a good.
Let's talk about it.
A negative to a positive.
All
Let's
right,
go.
so give us what happened with the negative and like why it was negative.
Yeah.
Why you think that happened, what you think is going on maybe with the market. Just hit us with it.
Yeah, so it was a flip that we had on Sawyer Street that we listed a week and a half ago. And anybody that's flipping knows that if they're putting a quality product out there right now, it's gone within 5 days or whenever your delayed negotiations go till. And we had it listed Tuesday, had it delayed till Sunday, and we had no offers on it. So I'm like, oh shit. But I think the issue that we had with it was the timing of year.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we're 2 weeks before Christmas. People aren't as actively looking for a house right now. They're looking more so to get through the holidays. So I think the timing really hurt us quite a bit. The house came out beautiful. But I think that was the biggest issue. But the nice thing is, right, so I have an agent that I'm very close with, and she bust her butt for me, and she was able to conjure up, and she got a deal actually over asking for me.
Wow.
She worked hard. She was on the phones, and she got somebody through that loved it. And right now, knock on wood, we're under contract. We're waiting for attorney approval, and we're good to go. So,
oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, she killed it for me. So
that's fantastic. And Sawyer Street, guys, for those who are watching that don't know, that's the 19th Ward.
Yep.
It's Ben's favorite street, Sawyer Street. Don't you own like 5 houses on that street?
I do. Yeah, I sold like 3 of them, but yeah, that's my favorite street in the 19th Ward.
Yeah, and that's a thing that I'll bring up too. So for a lot of people, I'm gonna turn my light up. For a lot of people who are, maybe thinking about flipping, or maybe they have a flip or whatever it is that one of the things that's happening is buyers have been conditioned to think that every house is going to go like $20,000 over asking. And that may not always be the case.
Mm-hmm.
So what you might have is someone that will walk through, love it, but go, I'm not going to be able to compete. I'm not going to write an offer. And what you don't want happening is that for everyone to think that.
Yes.
Because then you don't get offers. And so what happens is, what you need, and it sounds like you have, because I know I have one with our realtor, Amber, is that she's going to she'll actually, one time we had maybe 3 or 4 offers on a really nice property, and we didn't understand why there wasn't that many offers. And it was because of that reason that buyers were thinking it was going to go crazy over asking. So she was saying, hey, I saw you were interested. Are you still interested in this property? Because we're not getting an offer that really makes sense right now to where we want to be. And they're like, yeah, we'll make an offer at X number. And so you kind of got to go back and sometimes maybe talk to those agents and those buyers and let them know, like, make an offer.
Yeah. Yeah. That we've had that same exact issue where people are, hey, I love the house. We have 45 showings. We get 2 offers. And we're like, what happened? All the feedback is fantastic. And then we call and they're like, yeah, my guy just doesn't want to compete. Like, you can't afford to pay 20 grand over asking.
Right.
We're like, okay, but everybody's doing that. So like, give us something.
Right.
So, but I mean, the key is, like you said, is have your agent, they got to follow up with those people and make those phone calls.
Yeah. Cause a lot of times if you have an agent who doesn't really want to work, we are lucky. We both have good agents that want to make sure that they're putting their best foot forward. So anyway, that's good, man. So that turned out, because we talked about that wasn't looking really great for you. You were thinking maybe. But here's the beautiful part about real estate: if that
Yeah.
didn't go right, or let's say I shouldn't say right, let's say it didn't go as expected, you were going to do what then?
Yeah, I was thinking about Airbnb-ing it, honestly. And it's funny because I had a meeting this morning with a friend about Airbnbs who owns a couple, and he introduced me to his friend, and I got a ton of great information from that because of what happened.
Right.
So it was a negative thing that turned out to be. I learned quite a bit from just reaching out and meeting somebody else who manages our Airbnbs. He gave me some great tips on um, different platforms that he uses to manage his Airbnbs, and
Okay.
we can implement that to mine, and then it ended up working out anyway. So um, it was great.
You were
Great
going to figure it
experience
out.
overall.
That's the thing
Yeah.
is that you kind of got to be someone who is okay with the problems coming up, because that's kind of what we deal with every day as
Mhm.
investors is problems. So
Absolutely.
right, it's like it's part of the job. And if you're not someone who is able to kind of take on problems, or someone who, if it doesn't go your way, you lose your mind, it's not going to be a good business for you.
Mhm.
I
I agree.
believe. You know what
I
I mean?
agree.
Like, you kind of got to be nimble. So some things I would say, and Ben, chime in here, but some ways that it might help you to deal with these kind of day-to-day problems that occur, because they do, is, for me anyway, is I'm a big proponent of meditation. So every morning I like to do my meditations. I like to make sure I get my workout in. And that allows me to go, all right, so if a problem comes up, it's like, all right, it's not that bad. I mean, I already worked out. So like that's the hardest part of my day, is that part.
Mhm.
So everything else is kind of gravy at that point. But I know a lot of people, and I used to do this, would be like cold showers, because you
Mm.
take that pain in the morning and then you go, all right, so bring it
Yeah.
on. You know what I mean? So I don't know if
Yeah.
you have any, I don't know if you have any tips when you deal with problems, like what you do. Do you take like a time? Do you take time to respond to them? Like what's something that you do for yourself?
Yeah, I'm bad at that. And I wholeheartedly know that, especially with my biggest issues that I have is not stuff with flips, but it's tenants.
Yeah.
I'm just Italian, and I have a very short temper sometimes. So when a tenant comes at me and gives me a thousand excuses of why they're not doing this or whatever, I send it back in a message when I'm heated, and I need to learn not to do that.
Yeah.
But I think one of the biggest things you could do is like know what your weaknesses are, right? Know
Mhm.
what those are. And if you're not capable of handling those, offload that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I have a friend that hated management of properties. So what did he do? He went and said, you know what? I'll take the hit and I'll pay 10% in property management. But he's like, dude, I sleep great now. Like there's no headache anymore. It's like I don't have to deal with that. So if you're not good at doing that and not managing with tenants, offload it, factor that in. Or if for me, I hate advertising, I hate marketing, I hate cold calling. That's not what I do. So I offload that.
Right.
That's not my specialty. So knowing what your strengths are, knowing what your weaknesses are, what you can and can't handle, and then finding somebody to fill that void is
Well,
a good point.
well, that's great advice, because I think that's very practical advice, and I think people need to hear that like a lot, and really just let that sink in. Like, don't focus on your weaknesses. Double down on your strengths and
Hmm.
offload those weaknesses, and I believe that you'll do much better, and you'll actually go further, because that stuff that's limiting you, let's just say property management, that stuff can take away from what you might be good at, which is finding more deals. Or if it's the other way around, if you like to just analyze deals and you're not someone who likes to bring in deals, well, you need someone like you did to help you out with maybe your marketing and advertising, or getting out there and
Exactly.
pounding some pavement. So no, that's great. And one of the things that you do very well, and maybe you have something that you can share, but in regards to like a rental, is analyzing a deal, because I think that's an art and a skill that takes time, I think. To
It does.
so can you walk us through like what you look at when someone, because we can talk big stuff, but let's just start with a single family. Like, what are you looking at as soon as someone brings you a deal, right? And
Mhm.
you'll be the judge of that, won't you, Ben?
Yeah, certainly will. So, you were absolutely right. It takes a while, and the hardest part about making sense of numbers is figuring out what you're going to spend in rehab,
Hmm.
because most deals that are brought to you are going to need work. But the first thing that I do is figure out what I want to do with it, right? Because depending upon what my exit strategy is on that property, I'm going to run numbers a little differently. So if I'm going to hold it and keep it as a rental, I know that I need to be in this thing for 80%. And from there, it's super easy, basic subtraction, right? I start with the ARV, after repair value of the property, of what it's going to be worth on an appraisal on the back end, factor out my expenses of rehab, closing costs, and that's what I can buy it for. I mean,
Yeah.
it's literally as easy as that, right? The hard part in that, I mean, it sounds easy. The hardest part about that is figuring out what you're going to spend in rehab. And that's going to vary depending upon every single investor, right? Some investors have good contractors that are cheap. Some people do the work themselves. Some people hire, Pink Rose and spend astronomical amounts. It's all dependent on the person,
Right.
So um,
Now you
that's
mentioned 80%. What's that? Where does that come from?
80% of the value, obviously. So when we are buying rentals and holds, we're trying to, again, burn method. We talked about this last time, but the 80% means a bank will give you 80% value of that property. So if you're into that property for 80%, you get a free house essentially, without any money out of pocket. That's going to cash flow. So
Okay.
that's how we run those numbers.
That's
And
right.
then as far as flips, flips are a little bit more difficult because you have to have larger margins, right? You have to take into every single consideration as far as expense, when you're buying a flip. But it's the same thing, right? So on a flip, we're looking at, okay, what can I sell this house for? And that's where I really lean on my agent, right? So that's where I say, hey, Angie, I use Angie Brown. She's great. Angie, what can I sell this house for? What do you think I can get for it? She'll tell me, and then from there, I'll back out my expenses. And for expenses on a flip, you have to factor in, right? You have to factor in commissions, which are 6% paid by the seller. You have to factor in holding costs, right? So typically, you're going to have holding costs. If you're borrowing money, you're going to have your hard money costs.
Right.
If you're
And what's
buying it,
hard money? What's hard money?
yeah. So hard money or private money is money that you're borrowing from an individual on a loan that you're usually typically paying interest on. Now, essentially, there's a lot of people around Rochester and around the country that are hard money lenders that lend out money that they have, to investors to flip, buy real estate, whatever they want to do with it, and they charge interest. Typically, a good starting position for hard money is usually 12%, 2 points. Now, 2 points are just simply, they're essentially the transaction costs. 2 points is a point is the amount of the loan. So, for instance, if you have $100,000 loan that you're borrowing,
Well, let's
one,
do it. Let's do
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Let's do
one.
it. So we
Good
got
thing you guys.
100. So we got $100,000 loan.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's what I'm borrowing from. We'll just say borrowing from Miss Lender. All right, so we're borrowing $100,000 from Miss Lender. Now what?
So, in terms of a flip, you're saying, or in terms of hard money?
Hard money. Like if you were,
Yeah.
let's just walk through like a prototypical deal that you might be doing.
So hard money, right? $100,000. They're going to say, okay, I'm going to charge you 12% interest and 2 points.
All right, so 12%.
What does that mean?
So 12%. Sorry, 12%, and then 2 points.
Yep.
Okay.
So the 12%, yeah. So the 12% interest is, the way they run that is based on the year. So you're going to pay 12% interest over the year. So essentially, what you do is you take $100,000 and you times it by 12% or 0.12, right?
Yeah.
And that's going to bring up $12,000.
So if we're borrowing $100,000 at 12%, and we use that for the entire year, we owe that person $12,000 in interest, right?
Correct.
So $12,000 if we were using this 100,000 for the entire duration. So your investor, okay, guys, is going to get their $100,000 back, right? Their principal, but they're going to make $12,000. So really quickly, you and the hard money lender, you got to remember they need you just as much as you need them. There's a lot of hard money lenders that want to make 12 grand on $100,000 when they're not doing anything. Remember, this money is sitting in savings accounts making nothing.
Exactly.
Inflation is killing them at 6 to 8% right now. They are getting their lunch eaten if you're keeping your money in the bank. So that's why it's so important when people are saying if you have a deal, the money will be there because people want to make sure they can get their money working for them or it's losing them money. Right, Ben?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So, so if you break that down further, right, it's $12,000 a year. But typically, if you're doing a flip, it's not going to take you a year. So
Correct.
then you take that $12,000 and you divide it by 12 months, and that will give you how much you're paying per month, right? So that's $1,000 a month.
Right. So now we're at 1,000 a month.
Exactly. And when you're buying properties using hard money, you're not going to be paying like you would at a bank loan. It's not an schedule, an amortization schedule, where you're paying both interest and principal on the loan. Most lenders are going to do interest only payments. So until you go to cash them out, whether that's through a refi or if you sell the house, you're paying that $1,000 a month. You're only paying interest, and then when you cash them out, you owe them the $100,000 back.
Okay.
So that's where it's advantageous for an investor, right? So you're not paying an AM schedule on that.
Right.
You're paying just interest.
You're paying just interest, and the other thing is the points. So what would be 2 points on $100,000?
So 2 points is $2,000. So every point is 1% of the loan amount.
Took me a while to understand that.
Yep. Yes. So did I. So and
2
as you do
points.
exactly 2 points, and that's just a transaction fee. Think about it that way, right? They're getting that money at closing when they go to buy that property for $100,000. You take that loan, that's going to be in your closing statement of $2,000 that you're paying them. It's going to come out of your closing costs.
Right. Okay. And that's why it's advantageous to be a hard money lender.
Exactly. Right. So now you're at $14,000 if they hold that for a year.
Exactly.
Right? So it's really 14%.
And the best part is for a hard money lender too. And this is why people, when they're thinking about, if you had a windfall or your company had an IPO or whatever it might be, and you have a large amount of cash, you don't really know what to do with it. Lending in real estate deals is really lucrative. It's a really great, it could be a full-time business that you're not taking a lot of time with, right?
Exactly.
You're really at the bank at this point, and we all want to be the bank.
Absolutely.
When it comes to doing deals, right? So that's really great. So now let's take this same math, all right, because we did 100,000, 12%, 12,000. Let's just do maybe a refinance that you had done recently. And maybe let's just go walk right through the numbers if you don't mind. If you know off the top of your head a deal that would be simple to kind of explain and we could just write it all out so people can see it.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're in the middle of one now.
Okay.
God, it better close soon. It's been a long time. But we're in the middle of one now. It's 8 properties. So I know it's a lot of math to do really quickly. But essentially, it's 8 properties that we're rolling into a blanket mortgage. That essentially a blanket mortgage is when a bank allows you to take one mortgage and wrap multiple properties around it. And what that does is it saves you on closing costs, right? So you're not paying closing costs per loan. It's one loan, one bank attorney fee, one all New York State fees. But we have one going on right now, and they're lending at 80% of the loan to value, or 80% of the ARV, meaning 80% of what the property is appraised for.
Right. So when people are going, well, how do I find a property that's 80% LTV? Well, that's not. You can make some guesstimates on that, but it's actually going to be based on what the appraisal is. Mm-hmm. So, guys, this is after you buy it. So that's why you got to be very careful when you're buying, and why people always say you make your money when you buy.
Exactly.
Is because it's going to be based on what the bank believes through their appraisals the value is. Mm-hmm. So let's walk through your numbers then.
Yeah. So let me do them real quick on my phone. We let's see. Let me bring it up. Well, I got you here.
Yes.
Maybe our loan amount is going to be 1 million. I think 1,050,000, if I'm not mistaken. So where is it? Yeah, there's missing a zero there,
Yeah.
right in front of that 5. Let's see.
So,
Assess actual mortgage.
but okay, so it's $1,050,000.
Mhm.
Okay,
It's a
$1,50,000.
million 50, and we owe. Let's see. 1,050,000 minus that. We owe about 800,000 on it in
Okay.
terms of hard money.
Okay, 800,000 in hard money.
Now that 1,050,000, right? The way that we came up with that loan amount,
Mhm.
that's 80% of what the 8 houses appraised for.
Mhm.
So if we do that math, that's right? Times 0.8. Yeah. So they appraised for 1.3 million, just
Okay.
over. Okay, that's what the appraisal amount came in with the bank, and the bank said, okay, we're going to take 80% of that, so we're going to give you a loan of 1,050,000. So from there, 1,050,000. I know that I owe $800,000 to hard money because I bought all these properties in hard money. So basic math, right? If you're subtracting those two, it leads you to about $250,000 in equity there. At 80, again, this is at 80% value. So it's $250,000 that minus your closing costs from the bank, which is probably be, I don't know how much this is going to be, maybe 20K.
Yeah.
So say $230,000.
Okay.
So $230,000 I am going to get a check for after I pay off the hard money lender on 8 houses.
And what was the amount of interest on the loan, the hard money loan?
That was 9.5%. And now the reason why with no points, and the reason why, I'm at 9.5% is because I've done 50 deals with my lender. So we have a great relationship. Once you get to that point, you start dropping off points and you start lowering your interest rate because they trust you, and you're giving them so much business.
But you've done the 12 and the 2 in the past.
I have done 12 and 2. I think I've done 12 and 3 in the past. So yeah, we all start there.
So you built that business up. You have to earn your stripes. But a lot of times, even with the 12 and the 2, if it works, it doesn't matter, right? It's just it's a number. You calculate it in. So okay. Exactly.
So so the $230,000 in equity is essentially I'm going to get a check back at the closing table when I go say, okay, I want to put a loan on these 8 houses. The bank's going to say, okay, here's a check for $230,000. So I'm going to get a check for $230,000 that's tax free. There's no tax penalty on that money, which is enormous, right? You can't find another investment vehicle that will allow you to do that.
No.
It's incredible. And then on top of that, right, you have these houses that you have no money into out of your own pocket. That have tenants in them that are paying that mortgage for you. And they're at a rental rate where it cash flows on top of that of, I don't know how much, probably $2,500 a month.
Yeah. So the rent pays the mortgage and some, right, with the expenses that come up.
Yeah, it pays everything. Yeah. So that pays all of my holding costs for that house.
And then that equals, so the rent pays the mortgage. And then so now you're doing the pay down on the mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
You're not doing any of that. That's just from rent.
That's just from a tenant paying.
Just from a tenant labor. So the tenant's labor is paying down your mortgage.
Exactly.
On this that you own. So this is wealth, right? That you have through your real estate that you were able to create through real estate.
Only real estate.
Yeah, only real estate. So that's a beautiful thing. So you're getting a $230,000 check that is not taxed because it's equity. It's a refinance.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike, I should say, there's no capital gains tax.
Yes.
And then your rent's going to pay your mortgage. You're going to have cash flow, which allows you to now focus on another deal and keep it moving.
Exactly. Move on to the next one.
Love it. And really, it's funny though, Ben, when we look at this, it's a mindset shift, right? Because if I would have talked to you first day and I said $1 million deal, $800,000 hard money, you'd be like, whoa, right?
Right.
Well, we're really just adding a zero. this could have been $100,000 house and $80,000 of hard money.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was 8 of those.
Right,
Right. That's what it was.
right. But if, and again, I'm not saying jump into $1 million deal, but you can see how quickly it starts to just make sense to go bigger because there's more value, and now you're able to do bigger deals. And what happens when you do bigger deals is you start to find yourself in less competition, Ben.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
100%.
100%. So that's really neat. So now what's the plan after that? Once you do your refinance, what are you on to next, you think?
Yeah, so that refinance, I'll probably take that money. I'm actually 1031 exchanging 3 of my properties that I had as rentals that I'm pulling equity out, buying a mixed use commercial building that I'm going to turn into a laundromat. And that $230,000 is going to pay for the equipment and the build out on that. So then I own this property free and clear. That makes, a significant amount of money, a year. So, but that's the direction we're going, out of residential, more mixed use, industrial, self-storage, laundromats, Airbnb stuff. If we can find them. That's the goal.
That's great. And it starts with that one house that you bought.
And yeah, and like literally last year, I was still all about rentals, and then it's literally just a mind shift of, okay, this isn't working. What's next? Let's do a little research. Let's join a coaching group, and let's learn from other people. And literally, 1 year later, we've completely shifted our mindset, and we're moving in a different direction. But that's the beauty of real estate, right? When you buy properties, right, all the doors, all your exit strategies come when you buy a property. That's gonna dictate how you get out of a deal. You may have 4 exit strategies. You may have 1.
Right.
But buying that deal right is what opens up the doors in the back end.
No, that's beautiful, because it really it does open up doors, and it also opens up opportunities, like you said, when you join a mastermind, what that can do, and really why you join a mastermind or why you join any club, whether you're paying for it or not, is just to decrease the time it takes to get to that next step, because you're able to surround yourself with the people who are doing it, right? So you're hearing the stories, and it's giving you confidence. And you're like, you're the same as me. You're just a regular dude. Like, you don't have anything that's special other than you wanted it, right? And you wrote it down, and you went after it. So that's what we're doing, man. That's great. So that's a pretty standard deal, or not standard, but that's like the nuts and bolts on something along those lines. But yeah, the 80% loan to value, you can kind of interchange that. That's probably the most, though, Ben, right? That's probably the most that the bank's going to give you.
Yeah, typically you're not going to get more than that. A lot of banks are 75%. Certain ones are 80%.
Now, one of the things that we had a problem with in the beginning and not a problem, but just something to keep your eye out for, is that when the bank, because of some of these loans, these blanket loans, they're adjustable, right? Mm-hmm. There is usually a 3-year, a 5-year. Can you explain that a little bit? Because I think that doesn't get talked about a lot.
Yeah. So you're talking about the interest rate. It's not a fixed rate, right?
It's not a fixed rate with a blanket on the commercial, right?
Exactly. Typically, if you're like a homeowner and you're going to buy through premium mortgage, they're going to have a rate lock on your interest rate of 4% for the life of the loan. That doesn't happen with investment properties. Typically, like you said, they usually have an adjustment at 3 or 5 years. The longer you can push that out, depending upon what interest rate you're buying it at, the better, right? Mm-hmm. So the one I'm just doing now through Family First is 5-year adjustable.
That's great.
CNB, when I was doing it through residential, their residential apartment was 3 years.
3 years.
So right now, when interest rates are low, you want as long as possible. You want to get 10, 15 if you can.
Right.
But typically, if you're going to get that longer term, your interest rate's going to be a little bit higher that they're going to charge you, and your LTV, or your loan to value, is going to be a little bit lower.
Right. So if we want to do if it's like a more of a cash flow play, mm-hmm. You might be willing to take a less year term. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's the kind of investor that I am. Not that it's for everybody, by all means. That's why I don't buy a lot in Park Avenue, those Class A neighborhoods, because the cash flow is just not there. But I buy on cash flow and I buy on getting into it for 80%. And I'm okay with having a 5-year term because in 5 years, I'd rather offload that property anyway and take my equity and run into something else.
Yeah. See, but what Ben's talking about is like strategies. So you
Hmm.
got to kind of figure out what the best strategy for you is. Ben wanted to get out of his 9 to 5, so he knew cash flow was the only way to get there.
Exactly.
And so that's something you got to make sure that's in your head. If you're someone who wants the appreciation, that it's going to be a long-term play, maybe you're less on the cash flow, but you know that you're going to get more appreciation on some of those type, Class A properties. But you might be able to get that perfect window where you get both, which you
I'd
did.
love.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which you were able to do buying the 19th ward, even 4 years ago, you were
Hmm.
able to get that. So no, that's great. So now, as we talk about, because a lot of people I don't think know that part is that it's adjustable, and it could work out to your favor, like it has for us
Hmm.
the last couple years. So for when we bought in 2015, 2016, that 3-year term's up, our interest has gone down because the
Okay.
rates have gone down, right? So we were used to be at 5 when we first signed, with these deals that we did in 2015, 2016. And then after the 3-year or the 5-year on some of them, because we're right around that time, that rate has gone down. So now we're paying less monthly. So
That's a good deal.
it worked out great. It's got to be tough for those banks that go, damn.
Yeah. Yeah. I know a lot of the clauses. I know a lot of the banks that have clauses in there that if they're at 5% now, that will never go below 4.5.
Sure,
There's a lot of
sure.
back end because they're underwriting everything themselves, of course.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
And but that's the scary part about what's happening now is that with what the Fed just announced that they're going to be increasing. Well, they're going to be stopping, or they're going to be tapering the quantitative easing, and then they're also going to be ipso facto increasing interest rates to start to curb some of this inflation that's going on. So that just means even more if this is something you want to do, or if you have properties that you own free and clear. Two big reasons why you should look at refinancing for if you own something free and clear. Number one is just the security purposes of like, you don't, if you get sued, God forbid, you really want to have some leverage in there so that someone can't, beat you up. You really want to keep a little bit of that's something that you want to think about and talk to your attorney. I'm not an attorney. This is no financial advice or anything.
Right.
It's something to think about because that's a big deal. You don't want to be able to have all that open for someone to get you.
Mhm.
And the second thing is with those interest rates going up, you may not be able to catch what's been great or which has been such a huge factor of being able to buy all these houses is because of the low interest rate. And that's how we've been getting cash flow is because of the bank's interest rate. I think a lot of people that I talked to, Ben, back in the day, these old timers, they were buying stuff when it was at 12, 15, 17%
Yeah.
at
I
a
can't
bank.
imagine. I cannot imagine buying it that high.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah.
But
It's
it's
crazy.
not that long. I mean, it's really not that long ago, really, in the grand scheme of things back in the 80s. And, it's like that's what it was. And
Mhm.
somehow they still made it work. So, anyway, I think that's something we don't know personally, Ben and I. We
Nope.
don't know. We don't know what that looks like buying in those types of environments. And I think it's probably how a lot of the creative deals, I know they did, were birthed out because of those things, because you couldn't afford to do it the other way.
Right.
But speaking of creative deals,
Yeah.
any creative deals that come across your desk recently that have you looked at or have you seen? Because we did one last week that it turned out really cool.
We have a couple projects in the works that we need to be creative on to figure out. We have
Okay.
an industrial space that the owner is interested in holding a mortgage on it, which is huge, but it needs a lot of work. So we got to figure out how we're going to fund it and how to make that deal work. I mentioned before we started, there's a self-storage deal. That's a big nut that we try to take down again. It's something that we'd have to get creative with. So
Okay. Yeah,
yeah,
and those are like those are the fun stuff. Those big
big
projects.
stuff.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the stuff that gets you amped up. We actually have a couple questions here. So, what are ways to get renovation funds without credentials or credit? So, what are ways,
Yeah.
Ben? Anything that comes to mind there?
Friends, family. It depends on what stage of investing you're at, right? So if you have a lender, if you already own the property, it's going to be tough with a lender. But if you're looking to buy the property and you're looking for funds, some lenders will loan on rehab, depending upon your credentials. But other than that, it's really friends and family.
Yeah, this person also then added, how do you find those types of deals with no friends or family involved? Well, here's the truth, right? So you better have a really smoking deal. Mm-hmm. Because if you do, then like I said in the beginning, you can find that type of thing. Or if you...
Nope, we lost him. And he's gone. So, yeah, so like Marty was saying, a real smoking deal certainly helps. And again, it depends on where you are. So if you own the property and you have equity in the property, one way to do it is through a refi. You can refi out, pull out some equity, and then rehab the property if it makes sense. If you have, if you're able to refinance that property at, if it's worth $50,000 and you can pull out $20K to make it worth $100,000, then absolutely that's one way to do it without having hard money or friends or family to do it. But it really depends on your situation. And as far as finding those people and finding those deals, you have to, like we said before, you have to network, right? You have to go out and find these people that are hard money lenders or these wholesalers that have deals that you can be into them, and they know that you can be in them for 80%, right? So wholesalers out there, hopefully the majority of them that are halfway decent, they're running numbers based on an investor's numbers, right? They know that this house is going to need $40,000 in rehab, so they're going to factor that in, and they're going to leave ideally some meat on the bone for an investor to come in and be able to buy that property and have that equity on the back end. So that's the only way really to find those deals. Obviously, you can do your own marketing if you want to get into wholesaling, right? You can go knock on doors. You can go send out letters. There's a lot of websites out there that will pull information as far as foreclosure lists, right? People that are motivated sellers, right? So the motivated seller is what a lot of people target, and those people are, motivated seller is somebody that needs to sell, right? You don't want to go to Joe Schmo that owns a house in a suburb and knock on his door and say, hey, I'm looking to buy a house. You want to sell? I mean, you might get lucky and get that, but 99% of the time they're going to say, hey, now I live here. Like, why would I sell it? So motivated sellers are kind of a target for a lot of people and a lot of wholesalers. Hey, he's back.
Yeah, sometimes you have to just charge your computer or it'll die if you
sometimes don't. It happens.
Sometimes it happens.
Yeah, no, I was just talking about finding those deals.
Keep going, Ben. What did I miss?
I was just talking about finding those deals and finding those people to lend. So if you don't have friends or family, right, you have to network. And that's what I was saying. You have to network. You have to find those people. But I was talking about motivated sellers. If you want to do your own marketing, it's you need to look into that. I'm sorry. My sister is, I don't have a sister, number one. That's funny though. There's a lot of Antonucci's in Rochester. I'm not related to any of them. I'm from like small town Batavia. So
I don't know how to take a question and put it on the screen. So we're getting better at this.
Hey, look at that.
All right. So the one thing I will say though, how you can do deals, and maybe Ben talked about this without credit or credentials, is selling the owner of the property on why they should work with you and hold the note with you. So there's a way to get into a deal with very little money down or no money down if you're willing to sell, or you can sell that owner on why they should believe in you, right? So why they should trust you. And there could be reasons why they would do that. Maybe it's they don't want to sell it on the market. They don't want to use a realtor, and they want to sell to somebody like an investor where they can get some interest on it. And they want to they just don't want to mess with the tenants or toilets anymore, but you're willing to do that kind of sweat labor, be the property manager, and you're going to buy it from them. So they're the bank, right? But they also want to get that monthly check. Maybe they don't want to get hit all at one time with that tax bill, and you're somebody that they trust. So start building up the credibility with the owner and seeing if they would be willing to seller finance you the property. That's how you get in the best ways without having any credit or have any money, really. I mean, you might need some money, but if they're willing to hold it with, truthfully, and I've done this, no money down, and they just want to get their closing costs taken care of, you might have to scrounge up $1,500. But guess what? Go to get a credit card and get it, that credit card's, where they give you the 26% interest on one of those credit card, get the money from the credit card, basically. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, the cash advance.
The cash advance on the credit card, and make it happen. Yeah. Make it happen. If you got to, Uber for a little bit, or you got to do some stuff, that may seem beneath you or whatever. I mean, it's all good stuff. You got to make it
hustling.
Happen for yourself.
You got to hustle.
Yeah. If you can't hustle to make, $1,000 within like 2-3 weeks, come on, man, you can figure it out.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's a good way to get into it. Again, that comes back to that motivated seller thing that I was talking about when you were down. But finding those motivated sellers is the wholesaler's niche, right?
Right.
Finding those people, finding those landlords that are tired, people in foreclosure, people that are back on taxes. And like I said, there's websites out there for all those lists, right? Like List Source. I think there's Angie something, right? That's in there.
Prop Stream. There's a bunch.
Prop Stream, yeah, all that good stuff.
There's a bunch, and it's just something that you want to work at, and you want to actually go and take probably about a month to 6 months of educating yourself if that's a route you want to go. Like, you're not going to just jump in and be like, hey, any seller finance deals available? It's like, those are like between you and the seller. Like, those aren't something that typically are sold to people, although you can get those, but that's something that you got to work for and get yourself. That's just by talking to sellers, talking to landlords, talking to people who, have done maybe the business before, and it's someone that you can connect with and do business with. But anyway, that's it. That's it today. It's Friday. Ben's already 7 Trulies in. And
I wish I was. And
he's got another 7 to go. So we don't want to hold him up too much. Ben, can you leave people with leave the viewers, the thousands and thousands of viewers, okay, with a little nugget of knowledge?
I'm running short on nuggets of knowledge. I'm lacking sleep with the newborn.
Oh, right. Congrats, man.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, that's amazing. I know you told me that because when was your son born?
The 5th.
The 5th.
Number 3.
Man. And you got 3 kids basically. Well, 4 kids, but 3 kids under.
Yeah, 4
under
kids.
4?
Under 4. 4, 2, and newborn.
Wow. Well, I'll let you off the hook. I will say, guys, if this is something that you are interested in, if you're serious in, you want to take your time and educate yourself. And I will say one of the best ways of educating yourself is going out to events, talking to people who've done it, and realizing that people are just human beings. No one's superior than you. You just go out, buy somebody a coffee, and tell them, hey, you are someone who inspires me, or you're someone who's doing some awesome things, and I also want to follow in your footsteps. Could I take you here to talk to you? And you might not get them every time, but you might catch somebody at the right time that goes, yeah, absolutely. And here's how you could add value to my business. So that's it, guys. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Ben, take it easy.
Until next week.
All right. See you, man.